Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Joshua Arce, Joshua Reviews, Movies, and More. And today's movie review is going to be Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. This is one of my favorite movies of the year so far. This is one of my most anticipated movies of the year so far. Christopher Nolan is a very highly respected filmmaker within the industry. Obviously, one of the best filmmakers of our current generation, of the past decade for sure. He's made some absolute bangers. I have not seen all of his work, but the work that I have seen is just absolutely phenomenal, and the work that he does on this movie absolutely knocks it out of the park. I'm in my room. It's not the best setup in the world, but it's better than no setup. And I thought that I'd just go on here and share my quick thoughts about the Odyssey because everyone's talking about it right now, and I want to talk about it. So let's go. So to get into my positives, I think I'm not really gonna have too many negatives, which is one positive. This movie had me hooked from start to finish. And this movie is almost 3 hours long, okay? And I gotta say, I really had to use the bathroom for those 3 hours, but I held it because of how good this freaking movie is, okay? There are a lot of people out there trying to hate on this movie, trying to be really down on it, trying to say that it's boring. And I get that movies are very subjective, but to me, I was hooked all the way through from start to finish. This was an amazing movie. Christopher Nolan does a great job with the direction. The entire cast gives phenomenal performances. Elliot Page, Matt Damon, Anne Hathaway, John Bernthal, Tom Holland. Everyone gives a phenomenal performance in this movie. And I don't know. I'm not really going to try and project the Oscars right now. But I do think some of these performances will be nominated next year, which, congrats to them and the entire crew. They worked so hard on this movie. Every single shot is filmed on real locations, in real locations. They shot all over the world for this movie, and it shows, and you can feel it on screen. It is the way that you would go about making a movie several years ago, and that's some of the things that Matt Damon has talked about on this press tour, is how traditional of a filmmaker Chris Nolan is. And the entire film is shot on IMAX. Now, I was not able to unfortunately see this in an IMAX theater. I am in Costa Rica at the moment. They don't really have IMAX theaters here, but maybe when I get back home to the States, I'll probably go and try and see it in IMAX to get that full experience. Everybody just does a great job, and the cinematography is amazing. And the story, although it's a simple story, and although it's a story over 3,000 years old, the way Nolan adapts it makes it feel new and fresh, and you instantly get hooked to all these characters and Odysseus' story and his journey back home. I thought it was really cool to see him throughout the movie. And this is a little bit of a spoiler. I think you see it in the trailers, but he's kind of trying to get his memory back and to find his way back home. And it's a beautiful story, and Christopher Nolan adapts it almost perfectly, in my opinion. And, like I said, I don't really have too many negatives for this movie. I think the only negative I really have is the pacing at times. It does seem slow in the middle, but the thing about it, and this is just another positive, as soon as it gets slow, it immediately hooks you back in. Benny Safdie as Agamemnon just aura farms the entire movie, but his presence on screen and his performance in this movie is amazing. It's great. Matt Damon as Odysseus, the entire basically final 20-30 minutes, 40 minutes, he's just being a total badass. Hashmish Patel, I believe is his name, who basically plays Odysseus's right wingman, his wingman, essentially, does a great job. I'm sorry if I'm stuttering a little bit. I'm just trying to find the words here. I think this movie does a great job of encapsulating the consequences of war and what it would be like to be in this type of war, and it really immerses you within that world. And it's a film about PTSD, depression, love, family. It tackles so many different themes, and Nolan does it great. There's even a sequence within the movie that Nolan goes full on horror almost. And this movie made me realize that I want a Christopher Nolan horror movie, and I think that would be so unbelievably peak. It'd be amazing. I'm not gonna get into spoilers right now, but like I said, that sequence is absolutely phenomenal. It's great, and if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Matt Damon as Odysseus absolutely carried this movie. He just, every time he was on screen, he carried the film. He really, really worked hard on this movie. And this is some of his best work that I've seen from him. And it's really, really great. And this film, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that it's one of the best films within the last 5 years, I think, in my opinion at least. And one of those other films that has been great in the last 5 years is Oppenheimer. Nolan just continues to put out banger after banger after banger. Nolan left comic book movies almost 14 years ago whenever the Dark Knight trilogy ended. Okay, since then, he's just come out and made banger after banger. Dunkirk, Interstellar, Oppenheimer, The Odyssey. I know some people are really 50-50 on Tenet. His filmography is some of the best work that I've ever seen from any director, and that's why he gets so much praise within the industry. And any director would love to have a career like Christopher Nolan, where they're just able to come up with an idea and just execute it so well. And I'm not saying other filmmakers don't. I'm just saying that whenever it's Christopher Nolan, at the helm, it's going to be a pretty good movie. And I think Tom Holland probably gives his best performance of his career so far in this movie. It's really, really great. His direction under Nolan really, really works. Anne Hathaway really stole the show. Great freaking performance. Robert Pattinson in this movie. To go from playing Batman to kind of playing the sniveling, kind of arrogant, kind of almost a jerk weakling of a character. This would definitely be considered a LARPer back in his day. Antinous. He was definitely a LARPer of a certain degree. He was literally the definition of talk all the talk you want, but you cannot do the walk. And he just played a loser so well. It was just great. He played a villain so well, and Robert Pattinson is just an amazing actor. Him and Tom Holland have done 3-4 movies together now, and whenever they were both on screen, all I kept on thinking was obviously Batman, Spider-Man, how cool that would be. But their chemistry is great. Their sort of rivalry within the film works really, really well. The dog stuff is really, really well, for whatever reason I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head. Argo, yeah, it's something like that. There's a particular scene in the movie that really hits home, and the dog gives a great performance. Telemachus's journey, and you really see his arc throughout the whole film, how he kind of starts out as a boy, and then as the film progresses, he becomes more of a man, and he really steps into his father's shoes, although he's never really known his father. He's only really known these stories that have been told about him. But by the end of the movie, he really fills his father's shoes, and really takes that place and takes that mantle really, really perfectly. And man, I want to get into spoilers so bad, but I don't really want to spoil it right now. I will give a warning whenever I do eventually go into spoilers. Like I said, the cinematography is great. It's amazing. There are some shots in this movie that when I was looking at it, I was like, oh my God, that's just beautiful. There's a particular shot in the movie that was cut, and I really, really would have liked to see it. Because it's just absolutely beautiful. Elliot Page as Sinon, great job. He did a fantastic job. I know there was a lot of controversy surrounding him, but and to be honest, guys, he wasn't even on screen for more than 5-6 minutes, like at most. and he really took up that screen time, and he really made it work. There's a sequence in the movie that he does a great job in. Benny Safdie doesn't even have a lot of lines in this movie, like I said earlier, but when he does speak, there's just a certain presence to him, and it works, and the way that Nolan sort of depicts the gods in this movie. And I think what audiences are really looking for now is great mythological storytelling. We see that with Obsession, we see that with Backrooms, we see that with this movie. And I think the way that Nolan sort of tackles the Greek mythology within this movie and depicts the gods, and doesn't even really go over the top with it, but whenever you hear a thunder crackle, you're like, oh shit, Zeus is about to do something, or the waves are crashing back and forth, in the boat scenes, which you guys see in the trailer. You're like, oh my god, Poseidon's really upset. Nolan did a really great job on depicting how it would be to be within those times, and how it would be to live within that world. And it's really interesting to see. And Zendaya, I cannot believe I haven't even talked about her yet. Does a great job in this movie playing Athena. It's a great role that she has alongside Matt Damon, who she shares most of her scenes with. And it's great, and I cannot wait to see her in Brand New Day, and I cannot wait to see her in Dune 3. She's a phenomenal actress, and I know she does great work in Euphoria, but I've still not seen that show. She's just had a stellar career, and I cannot wait to see what she does next. But to get into spoilers, I'm gonna go ahead and give y'all my spoiler warning now. But to get into spoilers here, there is a sequence within the movie set within Hades, and it is brilliant. Benny Safdie gives an amazing performance in that movie. Okay, and in that particular scene, Elliot Page, that's the sequence I was talking about earlier, where he does a great job in. It's great, and you can really feel the sort of remorse that Odysseus has for all of his fallen men when looking at all of those soldiers that eventually come out of that huge herd. He just sees all of the people that he's let down, and the best freaking scene in this movie for Matt Damon is when he is tied to the ship and he is listening to the siren songs. And what is so great about that scene is that Nolan doesn't let us hear the song, right? He's pulling us into it, right? He's wanting us, the audience, to really like almost walk out of the theater to try and go hear that song, and it's a really great way of doing it and depicting it. And I think Nolan had a specific vision for that scene, and it was executed perfectly. And Matt Damon does such a great job in that scene. And Ludwig, his score in this movie, it's not really as profound as any of his past scores. Definitely not as profound as Oppenheimer. But when you hear that bass or those drums, it's great. And that particular scene where it's just a long string playing, and you see Odysseus's face, and he's trying not to give in to the sirens song. It's great. It's awesome. The Battle of Troy sequences were really well done. There were like freaking 700 people on the set of that when they were filming that, by the way. Absolutely insane. Matt Damon didn't even know there were that many people behind the door until they eventually opened it. Those sequences were amazing and amazingly choreographed, and the fight choreography in this movie goes insanely hard. And again, Agamemnon, man, just ore farms that entire sequence. Like when they open up that freaking gate and he's just there in his full armor, which is a sick design, by the way. A lot of people were hating on it whenever the first initial trailer came out. I don't know why, because it looks amazing. There is just a presence to him, and there is just so much going on within those sequences, but you're able to follow it very well. And the Battle of Troy was definitely fun to watch. The Cyclops sequence, by the way, huge shout out to that scene and that entire sequence. That was the sequence that I was talking about, where Nolan really goes full horror. And there's a sequence when the Cyclops gets hurt, and it is the loudest scream that I've ever heard in my life, and it is the most terrifying scream that I've ever heard in my life, because it is so unbelievably terrifying. It's just, and it's so unbelievable. Like, I wanted to cover my ears because of how bad it was. Like, it was great, but it was bad because my ears were just, they were getting torn apart. Um, and it's a great, that's a great sequence. Um, the violence in this movie, although it's not over the top violence, and Nolan has kind of talked about it, how he didn't really want to go too over the top with the violence, but when the violence comes, you can definitely feel it, and you can feel the impact, and it's shot well, and it's great, it's awesome. And then those final 30 minutes, that's the most locked in I've ever been for a movie in a hot minute. When Odysseus eventually returns to Ithaca, okay, and he's there and he's talking to sort of his former servant, his sort of right hand man, or at least his former right hand man, and he asks him when he's on the bed, is he coming? Will there be vengeance? And I'm forgetting the line off the top of my head, but Odysseus just says something along the lines of, "I'm bringing it all," and it's so great. And then that final freaking scene at the end where he is just absolutely going ham on all of these suitors, and the bow sequence when he finally does it and he pulls the string and Ludwig's score accompanied by it. It's just awesome. It's unbelievable how good that was, and the cutting back and forth between Telemachus and his fight and Odysseus's fight, and the way that you can see how Tom Holland's character, Telemachus, he was doing things in the movie that there were a lot of payoffs in that final sequence, where he finally is able to sort of slit the person's throat, the way he was training to do in the beginning of the film. It was great. It was awesome. It's an amazing movie. And it's an awesome take on Homer's The Odyssey that came out again almost 3,000 years ago. It was really the first kind of superhero story ever told, and Nolan does it great because obviously he's worked within the superhero genre. And it's just a great movie. And for my score, I would probably give it, I'm not even gonna lie, I think I'd give it a 9 out of 10. Like I said, it does drag at some points, but I think this movie deserves a 9 out of 10, that I wouldn't even be mad if someone gave it a 10 out of 10. If they gave it like an 8.5, I'd be like, okay, sure, fine, yeah, 8.7. But for me, I enjoyed the heck out of it. And, I maybe I'll go back and revisit it. This was the first time that I'd been in a movie theater in a hot minute, so maybe I'm just going off the high of being back in the movies again. I haven't been able to be in a movie theater in a hot minute. And it was a great theatrical experience, and it was great. So, yeah, I'll give it a 9 out of 10. It was phenomenal. The pacing, the writing, the screenplay, it's written beautifully. The script is written phenomenally, and Chris is a great writer, and the way that some scenes are written, especially within the dynamic between Odysseus and Penelope, their scenes are great. John Bernthal again does such a great job in this movie. Benny Safdie. I know I'm forgetting some names, and I'm sorry, but yeah, absolutely great. It's just a peak all around. So go watch it. If you haven't already, go form an opinion for yourself. When you go watch it, come back, leave your thoughts on the movie down below. And yeah, I shall catch you all in the next movie review.